Hey Dragon Slayers! Today's video is about types of dietary fat, oxidative stress, and inflammation. So low carbohydrate diets are often, but not always, high in animal fat and protein. Many people who avoid animal fat do so out of fear of saturated fat. The saturated fat will clog your cells and block insulin from working, is the common cry. There are a few scientific problems with this sentiment. First, animal fat is never exclusively just saturated. It is a broad mix of saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated fats. Second, the muscle of insulin sensitive athletes is just as fat filled as the muscle of obese, insulin resistant people. However, fat does matter, just not the kind that you think. The most likely fat that matters is a type called ceramide. It is it and it's not one that you need to worry about in your diet. It's the one that your cells essentially make. As discussed previously, ceramide production is activated by inflammation. Once turned on, the cell will turn an innocent saturated fat into a ceramide. And the ceramide then makes the cells less sensitive to insulin. Critically, ceramide levels are not increased in the tissues of people who adopt a carbohydrate-restricted, fat-liberal diet. In one, so equally important, saturated fat in the blood is not increased in people adhering to a high-fat diet. In one study, the low-carbohydrate group, despite eating 3 times more saturated fat than the low fat group, not only had a much greater drop in fasting insulin, but also a 2 to 3 times greater reduction in saturated fats in the blood. In fact, adding saturated fat to a meal, like lard, actually reduces blood fats to lower levels compared with adding unsaturated fats, like olive oil. One of the dangers with avoiding saturated fat is what we essentially replace it with. Our collective fear of saturated fat has led to an embrace of polyunsaturated fats, derived industrially from seeds. Interestingly, replacing saturated fat like lard, butter, tallow, etc., with polyunsaturated fat, soybean oil, corn oil, rapeseed oil, safflower oil, etc., may actually do more harm. However, these findings don't apply to all seeds. The polyunsaturated fat, the alpha leonate, I'm mispronouncing it wrong, linoleic acid from flaxseed improves insulin resistance. The other mechanisms that create insulin resistance, such as oxidative stress and inflammation, are also improved with a diet that is lower in carbohydrates. Thus, carbohydrate restriction addresses several of the most impactful of the distinct causes of insulin resistance. However, avoiding insulin spiking carbohydrates has other effects that help improve insulin sensitivity as well. I covered how oxidative stress and inflammation can cause insulin resistance in an earlier video. Here, I want to briefly highlight that while oxidative stress and inflammation are distinct causes of insulin resistance, they're also influenced by the same dietary changes that effectively lower insulin directly, namely a lower carbohydrate, high fat diet. Some of the protective effects against oxidative stress and inflammation could be a result of simply avoiding countless chemicals in seemingly innocent foods. Much of the benefit could come from interesting molecules in the blood known as ketones. Ample studies have found that ketones elicit potential antioxidant and anti inflammatory effects. Having established the efficacy of a carbohydrate controlled diet in improving insulin resistance, we've really only seen the peak of the mountain of evidence in the support of health benefits of such a diet, largely because insulin resistance is so prevalent in how multiple chronic diseases develop. Countless studies over the past decades have explored the role of low carbohydrate diets in treating a host of diseases. So that's what I've got for you guys today. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it really helps the channel out. And remember, guys, that together, you and I will slay the dreaded diabetes dragon.